Right out of the gate, all of the parties knew that housing affordability would be a core election issue, and that's why it's in all of their platforms. Let's get some analysis about those plans with, in the Leslieville area of the provincial capital, John Pasalis. He's the founder, president, and broker of Realosophy Realty, who crunches real estate data on the Move Smartly blog. In Don Mills, there's Tim Hudak, CEO of the Ontario Real Estate Association. And in the Beach, Sabrina Maddeaux, a columnist with the National Post, and it's great to have John and Tim back again. Sabrina, you for the first time. Let me just, before we talk about the subject at hand here, I want to do a little in the interest of full disclosure. OREA, Tim Hudak's organization, is a sponsor of the agenda. We are very pleased to have them as a sponsor because it suggests that they support what we're doing, and we're glad about that. But I should point out, Tim Hudak was a guest on this program well before his sponsorship. He will be a guest on this program well after his sponsorship ends. We have him on the program because OREA is a big player on this subject. And I promised to treat Tim with the same benevolent hostility I did when he was Ontario PC Party leader. So everything will be as it once was. That having been said, let's just briefly go through the main platforms, and then we'll get into some discussion about this. So if you would, Sheldon, let's bring up the graphics here. The Liberals promise to build, preserve, or repair 1.4 million homes over 4 years. The Conservatives promise to build 1 million homes in 3 years. The NDP say they will build 500,000 affordable homes in 10 years. And the Greens promise 300,000 units of affordable non-market, co-op, and non-profit housing over the next decade. That's what the four main parties have to say on building homes. How about on fighting speculation? Both the Liberals and Conservatives promise to ban foreign buyers for 2 years. The Liberals would also create an anti-flipping tax on properties owned for less than 12 months. The NDP is pushing a 20% foreign buyers tax instead of a ban. And the Greens want a vacant homes tax on foreign corporate residential property owners. Let's do one more plank. First-time home buyers, such a key demographic here. New tax-free first home savings accounts come from the Liberals. The Conservatives are offering to encourage a market for 7 to 10-year mortgages, which they say will offer more stability for first-time buyers. And the NDP is offering to reintroduce 30-year mortgages on entry-level homes for first-time home buyers. All right, that's what the four major parties have on offer. And I'm not asking you three to endorse any of the above platforms. What I am asking, though, is what, from what you've just heard, do you like? What will work? What will be useful? Tim, start us off.
First, proud of you sponsors, Steve. Thanks for saying that. Despite the fact you used to beat me up in back in my politics days, the agenda and your work, the top show in Canada. We're pleased to support this public affairs program. Look, we've worked very hard along with our national association, the Canadian Real Estate Association, to help create that next generation of Canadian homeowners. And that also includes improved rental units. So we're really excited because housing affordability is a major plank in each of the major parties' platforms. And off the top, Steve, the stuff around housing supply, that is the core issue. We have fallen far behind in creating enough supply to keep up with demand, and homeownership is slipping out of reach for hardworking Canadians as a result. That's top of the list. There is more of a focus as well from some of the platforms on rental housing. The third I'll put out there is stopping dirty money coming from foreign corrupt officials or criminals snapping up real estate. Ontario Realtors want to make sure that any piece of real estate, any property, any home is available to Canadians who play by the rules, not somebody who's laundering money into Canada.
All right, understood. Sabrina, why don't you go next and tell us what of what you've just heard you think will work?
Well, I agree with Tim that I like what I'm hearing about bans on foreign ownership and addressing investors and speculators. I'm highly skeptical of all of the plans. And the reason for that is that they're still fueling demand. And as long as you're fueling demand, prices are going to increase and just become more unaffordable. And whether that's through increased first-time homes buyers programs, whether it's through tax incentives, whether it's through extending mortgage terms, the end result is prices are going to go up. And when it comes to the supply side of the equation, we've heard this before. I mean, in 2017, the Liberals instituted their national housing plan, and they're far behind on where they should be. They've built under half the number of homes they've promised. So I'm not sure what's going to change this time around, especially when I've yet to hear a political candidate acknowledge that we need to see a drop in house prices for houses to become affordable.
John, your take.
I agree both with, Tim and Sabrina on all of these issues. I mean, at the end of the day, the federal government's role on the supply side effectively is indirect. I mean, they really are trying to introduce policies to try to stimulate more demand. And, each party has different policies. They're all decent. Some may be more effective than others. I mean, one important thing to note is that when we think about supply, housing starts in Canada at our 40-year high right now. I mean, we haven't seen housing starts like this since the 1970s. So supply is coming on the market. And when we look at the demand side policies, I agree with Sabrina. I mean, a lot of the policies that are being put forward, especially the PCs and the NDP, are just going to fuel more demand. I mean, extending amortizations, allowing people to borrow more and take on more debt it seems like a good idea, but it's going to fuel demand and actually push prices up even higher.
All right. In which case, Tim, let me come back to you. And I'm sure you've looked at the party platforms in more depth than the simple bullet points that we put up there for simplicity's sake. So by that account, what do you think is missing from the party platforms that you wish had been in there?
Detail. Look, you use this expression yourself, Steve. You campaign in poetry, you govern in prose. The realtors are thrilled that at least these highlights are part of the platform. After the election campaign, then we go to work to twist arms and make sure they carry through in those details. To my colleagues' comments, I think we all agree that supply is the issue. More inventory, more choice across the spectrum. It's a first-time home, middle-class homes, rentals, and social housing as well for the most vulnerable. No doubt about it. Pleased to see aspects of that in all the programs. I get what they're saying around demand side. Totally get that. But here's the issue. Right now, the system is working for those that are connected. If you are rich, your mom and dad have an enormous bank where they can lend you money, the system works okay. But if you're a new Canadian, you're an entrepreneur, you're somebody trying to get into the middle class and own a home, that great Canadian dream, you're kind of shut out. So we're happy to see in the Conservative and New Democrat platforms, and to some degree in the Liberal platforms, assistance for those who don't have the access to the big money. The principle, they're making sure that they are appropriately cautious, but modernizing the stress test, for example, not making people renew their mortgage if they've already, go to another stress test when they've renewed their mortgage. These are sensible policies that will keep the principle of being thoughtful and long-term investment, but open up opportunities wherever you are in the financial spectrum.
Sabrina, what's not here that should be?
I'm more concerned about what is there. Unlike Tim, I'm more concerned about stoking demand. And the issue for young Canadians, ones who don't have family money or who may be low income, isn't that they can't access more credit and more debt. It's that home prices are too high. So putting in programs that are going to make those prices higher and allow young people and first-time home buyers to take on more debt isn't helpful. Our housing debt is already at $2 trillion nationally. And according to international organizations, when household debt goes over 80% of a country's GDP, you're in a danger zone. Canada's is at over 112% right now. So anything that increases the ability to take on more debt for longer is not a solution.
John, what's missing?
Yeah, I think the one big thing that I would have liked to have seen is, when we're effectively a crossroads in our housing market in Canada where it's unbelievably unaffordable. And I really think policymakers should have focused on policies that effectively make it harder for investors to be buying single family homes. At the end of the day in Canada, 1 in 5 homes are bought by investors. In the GTA, it's nearly 1 in 4 homes that are bought by investors. And again, to Tim's point, investors are the people who are benefiting. They're the ones that probably have their own homes, have multiple properties, and if our policymakers wants to help people get on the ladder, I agree with Tim. It's hard for people who don't have parents cutting them big checks. But when you relax the stress test, when you relax these policies for all, you're not just helping people who don't have that equity from their family, are helping everybody. So if they wanted to target one group, helping first generation home buyers would have been smarter than relaxing credit and allowing all buyers to take on more debt.
Well, I keep hearing this recurring issue of encouraging demand. And Tim, maybe I can get you to draw upon your political experience with this. If too many of these policy planks are encouraging even more demand in what is already a white-hot real estate market, why are they doing it?
It is a huge political issue. I mean, the Canadian dream has been to own a home. That's what my grandparents did when they came here from then Czechoslovakia. They bought a home, they rented out part of it, they worked hard, saved every buck. They wanted some security and some stability. That remains a part of what many people want to do. So, Steve, we've done a lot of research through the Ontario Real Estate Association. Folks watching the agenda can go to aria.com to see it. But you will see not only for millennials and the parents who love them dearly, but want to see them get a place of their own and get out of the house. This is a driver of an issue. So if the sweet spot to win this election is going to be the greater Toronto, Hamilton area and the lower mainland of Vancouver, then you cannot blame the parties for trying to tap into that vote. But it's also a theme that's very important, and that is helping create that next generation who can get the keys to the home and say, I got a place to call home.
Sabrina, Tim just, in fact, echoed what everybody assumes to be true, which is that everybody wants to be a homeowner someday. It is a great Canadian dream. I gather you're a tenant, though. Is that right? You rent?
Yes, I'm a renter.
So does that speak for you? Do you want to be a homeowner someday?
It does. I'd love to be. I'm a typical millennial where I was raised with the dream of homeownership, and I was raised with the idea that if you work hard and you secure a certain type of job, you should be able to afford a home, and you can't these days. And quite frankly, it's a struggle to afford rent in Toronto because we've allowed our housing crisis to get to a point where it's not just an ownership crisis, it's also a rental crisis. And young people are spending ever increasing amounts of their paycheck on housing. And the problem with that is it doesn't just affect young people, it affects the entire economy because we're diverting investment from other more productive areas, especially coming out of COVID. We should be out spending our money at small businesses, at restaurants. Instead, all that is just going to our landlords' bank accounts or to the banks if we do have a mortgage. And that's why it's important that we just don't allow access to more debt.
Do you think any of the plans that we've talked about here so far and that you guys have analyzed will get you closer to eventually being able to afford that first-time home?
As it stands, I hate to say it, but no.
How do you feel about that?
Angry. And that's what you're seeing among many young people. That's why cost of living is by far the top issue for voters under 40 in this election. Housing affordability is the top issue for voters in the GTA. And there's a lot of frustration out there. And we're not seeing that echoed, as far as I can tell, by any politicians. Instead, we're seeing still a lot of pandering to homeowners. We're seeing a lot of platitudes and vague promises. And we really need to see more. This is a crisis. This is a serious shortage. And it doesn't seem like anyone in power is taking it seriously.
All right, let me follow up with John on that. All the parties have on offer some kinds of ideas to help first-time homebuyers get into the market. But if you're helping more people get into an already white-hot market, therefore increasing demand, how exactly does that help with house prices, John?
Well, I mean, it's exactly the point. I mean, it doesn't. It actually drives house prices further. I mean, you know, all the parties are trying to sort of walk this tightrope. They obviously don't want to do anything that's going to have a negative impact on the housing market because the majority of Canadians are homeowners. On the other hand, they want to make it look like they're doing as much as possible to help first-time buyers get into the market. But the more you do to help first-time buyers, the more money you give them, the more debt you allow them to take on. You know, it might help that first round of buyers, but ultimately it just pushes house prices up further. And I think that's the challenge that we're in right now. And I think that's why a lot of the younger people that we speak with who are looking at these policies are not optimistic that they're going to have any real impact on house prices in the near term.
All right, Tim,
Steve,
sorry, yeah, go ahead, Tim.
It's a lot of cynicism here, and I get it, right? But this is the most we've ever seen in a federal campaign ever when it comes to housing affordability. And I congratulate the leaders on doing all that. Thrilled some of our ideas are on the table. I would take a little bit of upward pressure on prices if you can level the playing field and allow those who are new Canadians, entrepreneurs, people who don't have access to bank, mom and dad, access to the market. But fundamentally, let's not forget it is around supply. We are seeing 1 million homes is the goal of the Conservatives. We need about 80,000 new homes a year in Ontario, so it's a pretty good number. 1.4 million to Liberals, which is new homes and refurbished, 500,000 the NDP. That is the core issue. My last point on home ownership, not only is it part of the dream aspirational, but we can demonstrate quite clearly that homeowners tend to give back to their community. Their volunteerism levels are higher. The kids do better in school and get better jobs. Health outcomes are stronger. There is an enormous spin-off of social benefit from home ownership as well.
And that's reason enough to try to get as many people as possible into homes, I guess.
Agreed.
Okay. All right. While you've got the floor, let me follow up with you, Tim, on this. The Liberals are pitching something called a Home Buyer's Bill of Rights, part of which would ban blind bidding as part of that Bill of Rights. What do you think of that?
So we don't like that. And let me tell you why. I mean, part of our job is to highlight the positive aspects of their platform when it comes to affordability of homes. We've done that, but also to warn people of ideas that are going to actually drive prices higher. So if you don't have the traditional offer process, which protects privacy, it becomes an auction. And in Australia and New Zealand, auctions are not mandated, but they're pretty common. And the reason why is homeowners like them because auction fever develops. People want to beat the person next to them, and they overbid for homes. Australia and New Zealand are facing similar price appreciation as we are in Canada. The core issue is not enough supply there, just like here. But I don't think changing the way that you do musical chairs is going to address the problem. It's the lack of chairs for people to find. You need to concentrate on supply. This, we worry, will actually drive prices higher in the marketplace.
Sabrina, what's your take on the banning of blind bidding?
I support it fully. We do have similar issues to Australia and New Zealand, but that comes to things like the speculation in the market. It comes down to foreign speculation in particular. And when it comes to blind bidding, as far as I can tell, prices would only go down. There's no other item that you buy and you can't tell what other people are trying to purchase it for. And ultimately, when we're seeing bids come in, hundreds of thousands of dollars more over the next competing bid, that's raising that one home's price higher, which then raises the values of all the homes around it. And we get caught in this cycle where the values are just spiraling ever higher. And that's exactly what we need to stop.
John, I wonder if, all of the well-intentioned, good faith efforts by all of the political parties and all of the special interest groups around this issue just are not nearly up to the task of dealing with a supercharged, overheated, white-hot real estate market. I mean, that seems to be the case. Tell me I'm wrong.
No, I mean, I think you are 100% right. And I think the challenge is that, at the federal level, I mean, historically, most of the levers that federal policymakers used to pull were on the demand side. When we look at the supply side, most of the constraints on supply are at the municipal and provincial level. So everything that the federal policymakers are trying to do on the supply side, these are very, very long games. These might stimulate supply 5 to 10 years from now. They're not going to have an immediate impact, whereas the demand side policies have an immediate impact. And I think that's the challenge right now, and especially in Canada, when our population is growing at a much faster rate than our ability to build homes, that's just going to fuel higher house prices in the future.
Well, again, so Tim, I'm going to follow up on that, raising the issue of how much control and/or influence can any federal government truly have over the market conditions we find ourselves in?
Third place, right? Most impact is going to be the provincial level, followed by municipalities. Nationally, will have the least impact on supply, but they can still make an effort. I'll give you a couple of examples. So some of the platforms talk about investing in infrastructure, particularly transportation infrastructure, but as a carrot approach. They'll say to municipalities, if you increase density around transit stations, for example, a great policy for affordable living, then you'll be higher on the list for this infrastructure. So they can make a difference there. The Conservative Party platform has a rollover. So if you invest in rental housing and you sell it, you won't pay the capital gains tax if you reinvest in new and enhanced rental housing. Great. The New Democrat platform talks about waiving the the HST on new rental housing. So they can have an impact in that area, Steve. Even though it's third, it's still worth pushing.
All right, let's go back to first then. And in that regard, Sabrina, I'm going to quote Steve Clark, the Ontario Minister of Housing. Tim Hudak says, number one, the province is number one when it comes to the influence over housing. Here's the quote from his article writing in the Toronto Sun. Toronto consistently underzones for density where they need it, and councillors continue to call for increased affordability, but they often don't support more density, at least not in their wards. If Toronto is serious about tackling housing affordability, they need to champion the construction of new housing and support opportunities for densification where possible. Okay, you've looked at this, Sabrina. Is the minister onto something there?
Absolutely. The federal government can't address this alone. It has to be addressed by all levels of government, and especially municipalities, because that quote is exactly right. We have a lot of zoning issues, especially in Toronto, where We have huge swaths of land that have single family detached homes. I live in one of those neighborhoods, the beach. It looks like you're in a suburb, but you're really in what should be the downtown core. And anytime there's a new proposal for a condo, even if that condo is only 6-7 stories, there is just so much activism that comes out against it. So if people want affordable housing, they have to support it being built in their neighborhoods. And we need to really see municipal politicians pushing for that, and explaining to their constituents why it's so important.
Well, Tim, that would take a level of political courage, and I'm not taking a swipe at them here, but you're essentially, putting a target on your back against the people who currently live in the neighborhood in the hopes of helping those who don't live in the neighborhood. What politician's going to do that?
Not too many. I get the incentive for municipal politicians. You phrased it well. They're more concerned with voters who live there today than voters who are going to move in that they don't know yet and therefore don't vote. So you do need the province to take, a carrot and stick approach here. I think rewarding municipalities that will encourage affordable homeownership and rentals by moving them further up the list when it comes to infrastructure funding. Every provincial, every federal budget will have infrastructure funding. Reward those who are bringing homes people can afford to market. Ultimately, you also need sticks if they're not doing so, if they're not keeping up with provincial standards. You do need tools like ministerial zoning orders to push those matters. They should be last resort. But unless we have that carrot and stick approach, we're going to be spinning our wheels. We recently did a study at AREA that showed that almost half of Canadians 45 and under are considering moving to another province just because of home affordability. So I'd encourage the province to use the approach I just laid out.
All right. To that end, John, tell me whether you think the unusually historically low interest rates that we've been, I guess, quote unquote, enjoying for the last many years, what part does that play in what we're talking about tonight?
It's quite interesting. I mean, it definitely plays a significant role, not as much as you would think, because at the end of the day, home buyers are qualifying at this stress test rate, which we've talked about, which is significantly higher than the interest rate they're paying. So in terms of their ability to take on much more debt, they're not actually benefiting from the low interest rate. They benefited once they bought the home and their rates are lower. I'd say the people who are probably driving the sort of the low interest game a lot are probably investors who are really benefiting from low rates and the cash flow on their properties and can kind of benefit on the profit. I think those investors probably are really driving a lot of the demand in some markets and benefiting from ultra low interest rates right now. In
which case, do you think the finance minister, whoever that is after Election Day, ought to try to convince the governor of the Bank of Canada to raise interest rates?
Well, no, I don't think so, because at the end of the day, the Bank of Canada is concerned about the entire economy, and the way they tried to mitigate and offset sort of the ultra low rates and not encouraging higher household debt is through the stress test. So we don't necessarily need that. I mean, we have the stress test, which ultimately is putting a cap on how much homeowners and even investors can borrow today.
Sabrina, would higher interest rates cool off the housing market?
I believe it would. The low rates are just encouraging the financialization of the housing market, and it's benefiting people who already have assets, who already have capital. For example, either investors or current homeowners who are taking advantage to leverage that and take on a second home, perhaps, or an investment property, or maybe many more investment properties. The problem for first-time home buyers is we can't come up with the down payment to begin with. So the interest rates, when they're low, don't help us. They just make affordability more out of reach.
Tim, what's the industry's view on the advisability of raising interest rates?
It's not going to help new homeowners get into the market. That is around supply and affordability. Yeah, you're right. You could put the housing market to a huge halt, but who's going to have the greater ability, or sort of the greatest challenge with higher interest rates? It's going to be first-time home buyers. Steve, can I throw one more thing on the table in terms of innovative ideas and the platforms around supply?
Please.
So the Liberal Party has a really good idea to convert commercial space into housing. So it's already built. We think we'll see a downsizing of that footprint because of COVID and work from home. So their policies help convert some of that to housing. It's already built. You can move quickly there. Similarly, the Conservative Party has a platform commitment of 15% of federal land that they have that's underutilized to put towards housing. The New Democrats want to change mortgage rules to allow co-ownership of homes. So all three have some new ideas that can actually make an impact pretty quickly in the housing market for first-time buyers.
Okay. In our remaining moments here, let me just put one final overarching issue on the table here, which is, and I think our numbers are right about this, About 2/3 of the families in this country, maybe a little more, live in a home that they own, or that the bank owns maybe, but you get my drift. The parties all say during this election campaign that they want to make homes more affordable. How does a politician campaign for that when it effectively goes against the financial interests of 2/3 of Canadians? Sabrina, you first.
I'd argue it doesn't go against their financial interests in the long run. Short term, perhaps, but ultimately our economy is at stake here. There's only so far you can push the housing bubble up before it bursts, and eventually everyone has to pay for it. Also, like I've mentioned before, we're diverting money from more productive sectors of the economy, which impacts everyone. And, there's a lot of conversation around young people, but what about parents and grandparents who are seeing their children have to move hours away or out of the province or even out of the country? That takes a social toll on families as well. So I would say there's a lot at stake even for people who own homes currently.
A minute to go. Let me give 30 seconds to John, 30 seconds to Tim. Go ahead, John.
The best thing that the government can do and we could expect for is at least then try to attempt to stall this rapid appreciation in house prices to allow supply to catch up, to allow incomes to catch up. No government wants to see house prices fall, but at least they need to ease up on demand and population growth to allow, supply and incomes to catch up to these prices.
Last word to Tim.
Yeah, third rail of Canadian politics. You touch housing, the biggest savings for the middle class, and that is radioactive. It really is, I think, Steve, adding enough supply to control the increase of housing prices and make sure that incomes can catch up and the homeownership rate will increase, but not driving prices down for those who currently have homes.
Well, as all things in life and politics, we shall see. I want to thank Tim Hudak, John Pasalis, Sabrina Maddeaux for joining us on the agenda tonight. Be well, everybody. And remember, as they say in Cook County, Chicago, on Monday, vote early, vote often. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is made possible through generous philanthropic contributions from viewers like you. Thank you for supporting TVO's journalism.